So, chapter 7, we start talking about tensions. And here we're moving into the Pendulum Principle. Okay? So, what we need to be concerned with here are the ways in which tensions drive communication. And we often think of tensions as being negative, right? We think of tensions as being negative. Intensities, tensions. And that we want to reduce the tensions. But actually, Comm in this chapter advances this idea about how essential tensions are to drive communication, to make communication possible. Right? Do you have any of you have a tension-free relationship with anyone? Tension-free.
Completely?
Yeah. It's impossible, right? So there's going to be some kind of tension or intensities. We're human beings. We have drives. We have desires. We have needs. We have positions. We take positions. We don't agree with each other on stuff. Okay? And because of that, there's always a danger of the tensions escalating to collisions and potential violations, right? Violence. It's always a possibility for this kind of escalation. But tensions in themselves are not, we have to get out of this idea that we have to, get rid of tensions. Because tensions can serve as the basis for more communication and deeper understanding of others. Right? So not always easy to do depending upon the level of intensity. Tensions are not always the same. There can be tensions that drive communication productively for deeper understanding, and there can be tensions that can escalate to collisions where people feel damaged or wrong. And that moves into violations. All right, so Plukhanov, in this chapter, uses the metaphor of the pendulum, right? What's a pendulum do? It continually moves, right? Back and forth. And what drives that pendulum in intercultural communication are tensions. All right, so we have to learn and try to understand how tensions function in order to use them productively and positively towards understanding, compromise, and integration. In one direction, right, towards acceptance, sensitivity, and empathy, and not towards disparagement, avoidance, disparagement, discrimination, and polarization. This requires self-critical action on our part individually. Excuse me. All right, so one of the first things that he addresses in the chapter concerns the difference between needs and positions. So what's the difference between needs and positions? What's a position? Positionality. Yeah.
The way you feel about it?
Okay, well, it's not just a matter of how you feel. I mean, how you feel about something can also be applied to what a need is. I feel like I need something, intimacy, or a glass of water. Or
Like beliefs, maybe?
all right, so positions are really connected up with beliefs, right? With beliefs and with ideas and pardon me? Okay, so a position is what you want, what you believe, what you embody, right, as perhaps a political orientation. Right, so are positions fungible? It's kind of a funny word, but how flexible are positions typically? Take a position. Yeah.
Well, if they're your beliefs, they're usually not that
That's right. I mean, when you take a position based upon a belief or a value, then, you know, that's, your identity is tied up with that position. And if someone attacks you based upon that position, chances are you're going to have an argument and potential collision with that person, right? So I can recognize the other's position. I can try to empathize with their belief system to some extent, all right, even though I disagree with them. And we'll have tensions, but, you know, I might learn something in the discussion, the dialogue, or the argument, or whatever the case may be. But if I chastise, disparage, and criticize the other based upon his or her position, then, again, we're back to the digitalization phenomenon, and there's no possibility for constructive communication. There's only polarization is going to take place there. Unfortunately, this political season, which keeps, it's like I feel like we're in Groundhog Day, you know what I mean? You know, it's like it doesn't go away. I have this fear that even after the election, it's going to continue. You know? And that every day I'm going to wake up and hear the same crap. I don't know how else to put it, where there's this polarization. I mean, even, you didn't even watch the World Series last night? Did you check the commercial, the political, are you watching the political commercials of Clinton and Trump? I mean, my God, you know, they're just trying to destroy each other. I don't see how either one of these people can survive after the end of this election. I've never seen anything like this in my life. How disparaging and polarizing this election has become, based upon these strong, hard and fast positions that cancel each other out. Right? It's a zero-sum game. Right? So it's very, very, very difficult, if not impossible, it seems, for a Clinton supporter to have any kind of sensitivity, acceptance, or empathy of a Trump supporter, and vice versa. Any of you experienced this in any of your conversations with someone from the other political point of view? All right, so this is the clash of positions.
I seem to have had a few, I think, and I think I managed to be empathetic and the other person was, so.
You had some understanding. You had some acceptance and some understanding. Okay, so that's a good thing. All right, so what's the difference with needs? What's a need? We have, you know, famous Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So what's a need, and why is it that we need to shift, which is what the chapter argues, what the author argues, that we need to shift away from positions and begin to recognize needs. Why is this important, and what is a need? Yeah.
I feel like the need is the reason behind why you want something, like why you have this position that you have. What you need will explain why you want what you want.
Okay, good. So if you shift away from the position and arguing it cognitively, and you move into, you know, an expression of your need, you're making a fundamental shift from the cognitive, of being right and wrong, to the affective, to how you feel. So I can certainly relate to someone who's expressing a need affectively. I can be more accepting and sensitive to that expression of a need than I can be to someone who's hammering me with their position. You follow me? So this gets back to what we talked about earlier about conflict, right? When you are having an argument with someone else, and you're right, and you think they're wrong, and vice versa, what are you doing? You're arguing from position. You're taking a position, you're arguing from a position. You're not going to move off of that position. The only way to move off that position is to be sensitive to the other's needs and to focus on the relationship. So you move from the digital position which cancels out the other position, to the analogical affective focus on needs, what those needs are. Yeah.
What did you say about tensions earlier?
Pardon me?
About tensions earlier?
Yeah, so tensions drive our conflict, right? But they also create the context for understanding others' needs. Okay, so I mean, the fact that we clash in our positions creates the possibility for tensions to escalate to collisions and potential violations, or perceived violations or felt violations. And if you cut anybody off on Facebook or other social media, you unfriend them. Now we have a little continuum there. You can unfollow them, right? And they can still have access to yours. But if you unfriend them, you're cutting them off, right? You're cutting them. That's a collision. Or some collision has precipitated your unfriending them. They've done something that offends you, or whatever the case may be. So, this is even set up within this highly digitalized environment of Facebook, and how can we not digitalize, Facebook and social media? That's what it's all about. It's about information. Not about, one-on-one, face-to-face forms of communication, which, in that context, you won't express what you would on a Facebook post, or in an email, or in a text, because you have the affective immediacy of relating to this person face-to-face. So what happens in social media is it becomes a highly digitalized form of quote-unquote communication, right? And it's about information, and information is highly digitalized. So you have to be careful about, not only who you befriend, but who you unfriend, and what the basis and the reasons are for that. Okay, so tensions result from a clash of needs and can produce lots of different kinds of responses at various magnitudes. But they also, as long as you can stay focused on needs, can create a context for communication that would not be there if they are tensions that are created as a result of hard and fast positions. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's look at this interculturally. How are needs and positions and so on expressed interculturally? Any ideas?
Maybe like the war in Iraq, or maybe conflicts between the different religions in different countries.
Okay, all right. So, when we move to the focus on needs, we're looking at what is human and what is humanly experienced, right? Again, we're moving more towards the generic cultural aspects. So, in order to recognize another person's needs and how those are being expressed, you have to have empathy, right? But if you are arguing positions, then that empathy may be more difficult. That's not to say that you cannot develop ways in which to negotiate differences of position in order to reach some understanding or some kind of compromise. All right, so don't get me wrong here. You can certainly have very different positions and argue them, but still have respect for the other, right? So positions by definition are not necessarily, certainly, negative, don't get me wrong, okay? But if you get rid of the affective dimension of that argumentation, then, disparagement follows, because you associate that person's position with their lack of integrity, right? Or their stupidity, or being uninformed, or being, all these other kinds of things. All right, so I want to move into another part of this chapter on ethno-linguistic vitality. okay? Ethno-linguistic vitality, and this introduces the bilingual education issue. All right, what's ethno-linguistic vitality? We're on page 165 here. So in the interest of time, I'll put this up here. Okay. So, ethno-linguistic vitality right here, the extent to which the culture can function as a collective entity because of the range and importance of its language usage. All right? So that's ethno-linguistic vitality. A language group with high vitality is more likely to survive and flourish as a collective entity in an intergroup context. By contrast, groups with low vitality are likely to disappear as discrete linguistic entities in intergroup settings. The author distinguishes between objective and subjective linguistic vitality. Objective linguistic vitality, ethno-linguistic vitality is identified with a culture's position based on available hard data, such as demographics. For example, the number of people speaking a certain language. Subjective ethno-linguistic vitality is identified with a culture's position as perceived by its members. When members of a culture sense that their vitality is low, or when another language group threatens it, group members may feel their social identity to be negatively valued and act to change their situation. So ethno-linguistic vitality is always a matter of comparison, all right? It can be determined and changed only in the process of intercultural interactions. Of course, this is part of the colonial legacy in this country and elsewhere, and the author gets into some discussion here about linguistic imperialism and understanding the linguistic landscape. So let's talk about this a little bit. It's political, and we certainly have evidence of this that manifests in various demonstrations, forms of resistance, protests, and so on, like what's happening at Standing Rock in North Dakota right now with Native American tribes protesting against the Dakota Access Pipeline. So the stakes are very high in this battle, and it's linked to a history of colonialism of the Native American tribes and imperialism. Imperialism is much broader than colonialism. It is an attempt to have, it's linked up globally, okay? So we're looking at a pipeline that is being built to get oil and gas out of the North Dakota fields, oil fields, gas fields, to the Midwest and, you know, down the Mississippi River and into pipelines to the East Coast and so on and so forth. So we're talking, you know, very high stakes here. Okay, so ethno-linguistic vitality, when we look at the linguistic landscape of this country, the United States, what do we have? Is English an official language? No, it's not. We talked about this before. It's not an official language. And we talked about this before also, how languages have done battle in this country, and English won out as the primary mainstream language because of the settlers from England, obviously, who came here first. So you know, English became established, but then the French also came in, and the Spanish came in from the south, the French from the north, right? Not to mention all of the different Native American languages that were already in operation in the linguistic landscape that we now refer to as the United States. All right, so languages have done battle for their own vitality. And it's almost like an agency of their own, languages. And they continue to do that. And Spanish has made great inroads, right? I mean, everywhere you go, you have the option now of Spanish or English. On the phone, at the ATM machine, you know, anywhere. You press a button to get Spanish instead of English, and so on. So Spanish, the vitality of Spanish has grown and continues to grow in this country, whereas French has really receded. All right? Okay, so, various countries have linguistic landscapes that you need to become familiar with, and they're often highly political. What language you use in what context with in your interaction with other people marks you politically in many countries in the world. Accent, dialect, and so on. Right? So one's relative acceptance is going to be based on one's fluency in the language or the dialect that you're speaking in. Okay? And you're immediately categorized based upon that ability, that fluency, that capacity for the different languages. All right, we'll pick up there next time and I'll tell you some stories. So